I am actually honored today because I have someone that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, and probably one of the most well-recognized and well-respected people I know in Chicago tech, the one, the only Terri Brax. Terri, welcome.
Thank you so much, Benny. So honored to be
here. Well, I'm glad we finally got to talk because it's been a minute, right? Like COVID and not being able to see each other at events and meet up for coffee or drinks. Like we just haven't. So, and I know you've been extremely busy. And as I wanted to do this series featuring some of the best women entrepreneurs that I know, you were one of the first names that came to mind. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, I am flattered because I know you know some incredible people all over Chicagoland.
Well, I could sit here and talk about you for a while, but I would rather have you talk about your background. So a little bit about, who's Terri, the things that you've been involved in, and yeah.
Okay, blank slate. Who is Terri? As you mentioned, Benny, I am the co-founder of Women Tech Founders. About 5 years ago, we started this organization as a grassroots organization composed of the women who at that point were 3% of the startup ecosystem. And we came together with the goal to bring more women into the startup ecosystem and give them the role models and the support that we didn't have at that time ourselves. And also, frankly, to learn from each other. And so it's been an exciting journey to watch the organization grow and watch so many amazing founders, find their success within the ecosystem and beyond, and to watch Chicago grow from that 3% to now 30% of the tech ecosystem.
Oh, wow. Wait, so how many years is that?
It's been close to 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
Been very, very exciting to watch that. And it's not only been one type of women, but our goal at Women Tech Founders was really to focus on helping all women from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from very diverse backgrounds. So we have had the incredible honor of watching women advance that represent every woman that can look up. So
yeah. No, and I think, I joined Baker Tilly 3.5 years ago, and I started to meet people from Chicago tech by 2.5 years ago. And I didn't really understand the ecosystem. I didn't even know the people. I didn't even realize how big it was. And then once you get into it, it's like, it's grown so much. Like I'm always very proud to say that. And it's not like the West Coast or the East Coast where you hear about it on TV or on the news all the time, but Chicago's got, I think, the highest amount when you look at percentage returns on investments for tech, and I could be completely off with that, but it's somewhere around there. So, so tell me a little bit about your road as an entrepreneur. Like, why did you want to be an entrepreneur? What made you take the risk?
I think like so many people, it wasn't a planned journey. It was a journey that it took, I think, to find purpose, to fulfill myself and also other people. So I think if there is a message that I'd like to say about how you wind up on this whole path to entrepreneurship, and what I've found really breeds success in it, it's that you bring yourself to it. You bring your differences to it, and you bring the problems that you're experiencing and try to solve them. And it's kind of the mashing of all of these things that eventually leads you to some point where you see a problem, then have come up with a solution that is uniquely yours, that you can share with other people and make it better for everyone. And so you want to have that happen. And so that happened to me the first time with TeacherCare, my first company. And TeacherCare is an organization that helps, sorry about that.
It's okay.
It's that thing,
It's called casual conversations in quarantine for a reason, Terri. So no, don't even worry about that. I've had dogs, kids, everything you could think of come in the background. So
nice. All right. Well, remember that when the next thing happens here. So as I was saying, I started TeacherCare actually to help other families like myself who wanted more from their childcare than having someone who was just going to be watching the child. I had my first son when I was really young, and I had come from a challenging situation. And so I myself was always looking like, how can I make his life better? How can I do this better? But also as a working mom, I needed childcare. And so all these pieces collided when I met a teacher who was providing home childcare for my best friend. And she had been through a traumatic situation in the past with a caregiver. And when she found this teacher, it was almost like this magical thing that was happening. My son, her sons, they were just kind of lighting up, and they were learning, and she was taking care of them, and we were learning how she was teaching them. And it was like, wow, this is like really a cool thing. And I bet there's a lot of families that would love this. And so I had left a computer company at that point and was looking at how am I going to return back to work at some point. I finished my MBA, and the options in the workplace, I didn't see that they were as important to me as it was to bring this to life and to be able to give other children this opportunity, this unique opportunity to have learning happen in a way that was so individualized and so personalized and so dramatically impactful as well. So when you have a teacher in the home, you're looking at very unique types of skills that they're going to be learning in a way that's going to be like so deeply impactful that it can change the child's life forever, and it can change the family forever. We work with families that have special needs, and we work with families that have very gifted children. We work with families that have lost someone in the home or have had a divorce happen or things like that. Teachers know how to tap into these things, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. And so they can really help, guide a child to success. And they can also, in that process, help children learn how to overcome problems, which leads back to entrepreneurial thinking. I know it seems like when you look at my two businesses, women tech founders, which tend to be pretty badass women that are, running these businesses. And then you look at these teachers that are in the home who, they have hearts of gold and will do anything and everything for other people. And where is the intersection? Well, the intersection is that all of these people are making the world a better place, and they're doing it in ways that are going to benefit themselves and fill themselves with purpose and fill the world with, all kinds of positive attributes. So that is how those two companies come together for purpose.
So when you have women tech founders and TeacherCare, like, how do you manage both? Because you're right, they're very different. They're not the same. So how, because it's not like you're just out there and you don't have anything else to do. You have your family, you have so many other things that you're involved in. So how do you manage two different businesses, completely different businesses?
There is definitely ebbs and flows that are going on all over the place. When the pandemic first struck, Women Tech Founders was in the midst of setting up a conference. And so we had 22 speakers planned, and we had a full day worth of panels. And all of a sudden, our event venue is closed off, and we have to figure out how to do an online virtual event when we've never done anything like that. And so obviously at that point, it was like complete throw in and, take care of this. So at that point, definitely leaning in there. We wound up having a great success with that. 2 months into the pandemic, we had the first reunion of people that hadn't seen each other in the tech community online on our conference. And so, over 1,500 views and people just really reconnecting. And it was such a great opportunity for us all to learn about what we all needed. And we discussed it through the different panels that happened throughout the day. We had female investor panel. We had a health and wellness panel composed of female entrepreneurs. We had women who raised, a panel full of women who had raised VC funds. The whole day was filled with discussions of these highly successful women, how they were handling this dramatic change in the world and what advice they were sharing on to the next generation. So it was really cool, but it was definitely a heavy lift at that point. We did a few other events shortly thereafter for Black female founders after the things that had happened, obviously. And then we did another pandemic, of the pandemic-driven event where there were certain women that have really stepped up and taken a hold, and how were they able to do that? So we did it quite a bit all at one time, and then the classroom situation just took a nosedive, and so TeacherCare just kind of skyrocketed at that.
I was going to say, because I feel like that would have been like this is the time for homeschooling, right? So tell me a little bit about that. Like how did all this affect TeacherCare?
Yeah, so all of a sudden the learning pad era happened. And so TeacherCare had been around for such a long time, and we have, you know, this database of tens of thousands of teachers that we had been able to pull from and really find the right teachers to take these unique situations on all over the country. And so we've been working with families that have unique needs, with children all the way from cradle to college is kind of, you know, how we look at it. So we believe that learning happens, you know, at birth, and it should never end. And there are different learning situations that happen. So putting the right teacher in the right position at the right place and the right time, you know, it again, you know, that there's that whole side of what it will do. But also, as far as COVID, you have one teacher that makes an agreement with one family or with a small group of families. And so you have that protection there as well. And obviously with so many families, that's so important. And so that has definitely just been incredibly, you know, fulfilling to see how we can step in so many places where there's no other solution to that problem. We also are always trying to make sure that we can help children who don't have these opportunities. So like TeacherCare has always done work with Shelter Inc. And with Willow House, which helps children who have lost a family, one of their parents. So we're always doing the give back as well. And in addition to that, now we're working to, and would love to know if there are nonprofits that need individual teachers, like we have personalized teachers. We are always happy to do that and take care of that work in any way that we can. So just, you know, any of the community needs anyone, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember you're hearing about your conference, and because we talked about the conference before, like before COVID, and I was like, there was so many things got canceled, but you were one of the very, very few people that I know that still made it work and made it into like a really good event for everyone that attended. So big props to you on that, because that's what I mean. That's the kind of stuff that, like, who you are, Terri, and you find solutions where there's problems and you deliver.
And again, not Terri, tons of amazing women that came, and men. You know, we had amazing sponsors that came to the table. We had, you know, we had amazing volunteers that were part of this. So it's total, you know, props back out to everybody that made this happen.
So if you were, instead of talking about specifics around the two companies, like if I were to ask you, what's your why behind being an entrepreneur, what would that be?
So the why has always, I think, I never know where to start with this question. And I know, Benny, we had talked a little bit about my background is a little bit different from what many people assume an entrepreneur's background looks like. And so I came to this whole story from a really challenged situation. And there was a lot of racism and there was a lot of abuse in my childhood. There were all of these things that were coming around. So very different from a lot of the entrepreneurs that had very professional parents and all that type of thing. My mom worked in a factory at night. My dad was very abusive. I had a younger brother. We were both adopted, and we were adopted into the particular family that we were in, largely because we were not introduced to other families, because at that time and place, we were not white and healthy. And my brother had one hand and I was a mixed minority. And so you were literally shown to families who were not, I don't know if the word is qualified, but that's how it was explained to me. And so my mom had been a concentration camp survivor. Well, she'd been in the Gulag, and that was her teen years. And so there was a lot of trauma that was there. And as I mentioned, my father just had a bad history. So they were qualified for us. We were qualified for them. So we came together as a family. And so as you can imagine, it was a different road that I learned. And there were a lot of rules that I had to kind of relearn before ever learning how to start a business. I had to figure out a lot of societal rules that are very different when you're in one social class than when you're in another social class. There were also issues as in school. I went to a farm school where I was the only person of color. And as that person of color, I was called every single racial slur that there is, because I think I just represented all of them.
We talked about this before. I grew up racially confused because I was the only Indian person and people just didn't even know what I qualified as. So yeah.
What are you qualified as?
Yeah. And those ACT tests where you have to pick like which one you are, nothing's like Indian. It's like Asian Pacific Islander. Like I didn't even know what that meant. So yeah.
It's totally like that. And so kind of getting past that, you had a better insight into the fact that there's a lot of other people that have different types of issues. And, as I got older, I knew that there are a lot of kids that are still back, having these kinds of difficult situations, or much, much worse. And again, my mom grew up in a concentration camp, essentially. And so, my story was like nothing, compared to hers. And it was always, growing up, it was always really clear that, there's a lot of people that have it much worse than you do. And so I knew that there was this give back component, and I wanted to figure out how am I going to be able to help someday? And I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I knew that it was there somehow and it was going to happen somehow. And I wanted to do it at scale, which I don't even know how I even thought about that at all, but I knew I needed to learn about computers in order to do this thing. And I knew that I needed to also learn about marketing and how to think about things and about psychology. And so, when I put together my my schooling and all that, it was like this combination of management information systems and marketing promotions and like this really bizarre group of things that I was interested in. But now it's like, I love that Steve Jobs quote where he talks about you can't connect the dots, until you look backwards. Yeah. And now it all makes sense.
I think that's such first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a cool story. And that's one of the reasons why, I feel like even the first time that we talked, we started getting into this deep conversation, and I felt a connection to you right away. Speaking of, what is your ethnicity?
So I did find out. My daughter got me a heredity kit just to make sure, but I did find out that I'm half Indian and half Japanese, and then half I'm part Black too, 3%. So okay. Very, who would have thought? But I grew up being told that I was half German and half Japanese. That was more acceptable in my family because there was a lot of racism that happened there. And my brother, who's half Mexican and half Irish, became Irish and German. So
oh jeez.
But you always knew. It's like we both look at ourselves and it's like there's something that's not right in this story.
And then the last question that I have for you is, what advice do you have for women or younger girls that want to be entrepreneurs and start their own business?
I think you need to look into yourself and what really, really matters to you. What do you care about? And then look at, what do you love doing? What do you enjoy? And what are you really good at? And kind of mix and stir and figure out, how can I put these things together? And you might come out with 10 different things, because there's not going to be one right answer. But when you get to that, you found a purpose. That's your why. And when you get to that, then now I have something that I can start to build a business around, that even when, and it, Benny, when all this shit comes down the drain and you're going to be knocked down, you have to have something that matters enough to you that you're going to keep going out there. And then you've got to make sure, okay, so this matters to me, and I'm going to figure this out. And then you have to know you're going to fail, and you're going to fail many times. And you have to learn that word iterate, which is the healthiest thing in the world, And if I have one gripe with school systems, traditional school systems, it's that they don't teach you to appreciate that process of iterating. That, I think, was one of the coolest things about coming into the tech startup ecosystem, is to learn how you can look at failure, as long as you're falling forward, as a positive thing instead of as a negative thing. And after that, you make sure that you can help other people, and you can help enough other people that you can, build this business.
I mean, I love that. And you said it in a way where it gets you right here, but you said it in a way where it is in order. And I love what you said about the whole purpose aspect and about failure, because Yeah, I mean, you hear all the time, people that are entrepreneurs, all the failures that they've had, and sometimes it can be really hard. But like the most successful ones are the ones that had the grit to keep going. So I'm really
I
glad
think
that
that
I'm really glad that doing this at least made us reconnect sooner than later. So I'm really happy for you. I love what's going on with TeacherCare. Love what you and I always respect what you've done with women tech founders. By the way, WTF, right? Women tech founders. I mean, I remember the first time I realized that I was cracking up. But thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being such a selfless person. And every time I had something or I needed something, like you were always quick to respond, even when you were busy with so much more. So I really appreciate it.
well, thank you, Benny, and we appreciate you too.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye, Terri.
Have a great one.